Hey guys, welcome to another week of Virtual Children's Church. Today we are going to go over lesson 63, which is God prepares the way. So God helped the Israelites defeat the Amorite kings and receive blessings from Balaam. So we're going to start off by reading our memory verse together. So I want y'all to say this with me. It's Deuteronomy 7:9. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. So if y'all remember, this is our picture from last week. So we're going to do a little bit of a review. So even after seeing God's power and faithfulness as he rescued the Israelites and led them through the wilderness, the people were afraid and rebelled against God's command to enter the promised land. Because of this, only Joshua, Caleb, and the young people under 20 would get to enter the land. While the Israelites lived in the wilderness for 40 years, some people became impatient and unhappy following God and Moses. Who remembers the name of the people who rebelled? It was Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. These three gathered others and went up against Moses and Aaron. How did God judge Korah, Dathan, and Abiram? What happened to them? An earthquake split the ground, and they and their families and belongings fell into the earth. So that's what you can see in that picture right there, is that earthquake happening and them falling into the earth. Then God sent fire to destroy 250 men who were trying to make themselves priests. But even after all of this, the Israelites continued to complain against God and Moses. One time they grumbled about food and water, and God sent poisonous snakes into the camp. What did the people have to do to be saved from the snake bites? They had to look to the brass serpent so that they would not die. And so we see that picture up in the corner. The brass serpent on a pole was a picture of Jesus, who would come to die on the cross and take punishment for our sin so that we can have eternal life. We saw how God used poisonous snakes to teach the Israelites not to complain. In today's lesson, God will use another animal to get the people's attention. And so, as you can see in the picture, this animal was a donkey, and God miraculously made this donkey talk. So today we're going to jump 40 years to the end of the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. The younger people had grown up, and it was finally time for them to enter the promised land of Canaan. There were many dangers they would have to face, but God promised to intervene. That means he was going to come between the Israelites and their enemies and clear the way for them to take this land for their own. God was with them and promised to bless them in their new land. So we're going to see how that turned out for them, okay? So we got a little map here. And so the Israelites left the wilderness and traveled to the land of Edom. Who knows who the Edomites were descended from? He had a twin brother whose name was Jacob. So this is Esau. The Edomites were descendants of Jacob's brother Esau, and they didn't want the Israelites to pass through their land. God would not let the Israelites fight against them because he had promised this land to Esau. So the Israelites went the long way around. So God also told his people to not to fight against Moab or Ammon because they were descendants of Lot. Does anyone remember who Lot was? He's related to Abraham. He was Abraham's nephew, or you can think about it as Abraham was Lot's uncle. So I'm sure y'all have aunts and uncles, so that would be how Abraham and Lot were related. Next, the Israelites came across the land of Gilead, which was controlled by an Amorite king named Sihon, who said, "You can't come through my land." And he gathered his army to fight the Israelites. But God helped the Israelites win the battle. They destroyed Sihon's army and took over all the cities in his land, including the capital city. Moses' spies went into the beautiful land of Bashan, which was controlled by a giant king named Og. The Bible tells us that Og slept in a bed that was about 13 and a half feet long and 6 feet wide. He was probably around 9 to 12 feet tall. So that's at least 2 feet taller than the tallest basketball players in the NBA. Think about the ceilings in your home. They're about 8 feet high or a little bit higher. So Og would have to dunk down inside to walk inside of your house so his head wouldn't crash through the ceiling. So that's pretty tall. Do you remember what the Israelites were afraid of when the 12 spies came back from the land 40 years before? He was afraid of the giant walls and the giants and walled cities. So what do you think the Israelites are going to do? Are they going to trust in God and go to battle against Og? Or will they be too afraid like before? Let's find out. So that up there is the land of Bashan. That's where they're heading. So in Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, it says, "Then we turned and went away to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to the battle of Edrei. But the Lord said to me, 'Do not fear him, for I have given him and all his people and his land into your hand, and you shall do with him as you did to Sihon and the king of the Amorites who lived at Heshbon.' So the Lord our God gave into our hand Og also, the king of Bashan, and all his people, and we struck him down until he had no survivor left. And we took all of his cities at that time. There was not a city we did not take from them. 60 cities, a whole region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars. Besides I struggle so hard. All these cities were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars. Besides very many unwalled villages." There we go. So, Og and his people came to fight at a place called Edrei. What did the Lord say to Moses in verse 2? "Fear him not, for I will deliver him and all his people and his land into thy hand." And God promised to give the Israelites victory over this giant king, and he did. They struck down Og and left no survivors. Then they took over all of his cities. Do you remember how many cities it was? In verse 4, it tells us they were 60 cities. And how are those cities described in verse 5? I'm going to go back to that one because I had such a hard time reading it. The cities were fenced with high walls, gates, and bars. How do you think these victories made the Israelites feel? These victories against the giant king and strong cities gave the Israelites faith and courage. They could trust God to give them victory. They didn't need to fear with God on their side. The way was now clear for them to enter the promised land without worrying about enemies behind them. Plus, now they had land and cities to live in. Several tribes liked this land so much that they asked Moses if they could have it as their possession instead of the land on the other side of the Jordan River. So Moses agreed to give the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half of Manasseh's tribe to the land of the Amorites as long as the men would still cross the river and help them fight with the other tribes to conquer the promised land. And so that's Edrei, and this is a picture of the city. So this is where people were located. So we can see Reuben, Gad, and East Manasseh are on the opposite side of the Jordan River, which you can see in the middle of the picture. So now we're going to get to our questions. These are true and false questions, so I want you to shout out the answers after I read them, okay? So the descendants of Esau would not let Israel pass through their land. So the Israelites took the long way around. That's true. King Sihon didn't mind the Israelites passing through his land. That one's false. They had to go to battle with King Sihon. King Sihon attacked the Israelites and beat them. True or false? That one is false. The Israelites were successful. King Sihon did not win that battle. So, the giant Amorite king who controlled the rich land of Bashan was named Oz. That's a different story talking about Oz. His name was Og, O-G, Og. So, God gave the Israelites victory over the Amorites and their great walled cities. True. All right. So now Balak, the king of Moab, heard about the Israelites' victories over the Amorite kings Sihon and Og, and he was scared. Were the Israelites going to attack Moab? No. Balak didn't know that God had told the Israelites not to fight him and his people. He thought for sure that they would come and attack him and his land too. So he came up with a plan to stop them. He got his neighbors, the Midianites, to help him. King Balak knew a false prophet named Balaam. The king decided, I'll send princes to Balaam to hire him to come and curse the Israelites. For it is said that whenever Balaam speaks a curse against someone, that terrible thing will surely happen. When the princes came to Balaam and asked if he would come with them, Balaam asked God if he should go, but God told him not to. Balaam obeyed God and didn't go with the princes this time. But King Balak didn't give up. He sent even more princes to Balaam. They offered him honor, silver, and gold if he would come and curse the Israelite people. Balaam again asked God what he should do. This time, God said he could go, but must only say what God told him to. So Balaam saddled his donkey and traveled to meet King Balak. But Balaam's heart was not right, and God knew this. Balaam may have been going only because he wanted to get a reward from the king, not because his heart was truly obedient to God. As Balaam's donkey was trotting along, suddenly the angel of the Lord stood in the road. He was right in front of them with his sword drawn, blocking the path. Now Balaam, he couldn't see the angel, but his donkey could. She didn't want to face an angel with a drawn sword, so she turned off the road and went into a field. What are you doing? Balaam cried angrily. He struck the donkey with his stick to get her back on the road. On the way, they went and they came to a narrow path with some grape vineyards. Suddenly, the donkey saw the angel again. This time, he blocked the road where there was a wall on either side. There was no way around the angel, so the donkey pushed against the wall, squishing Balaam's foot. Ouch. So Balaam struck his poor donkey again. He still didn't see the angel and didn't know what was wrong with his donkey. She had never acted like this before. On they traveled, and Balaam rode along the donkey until once again the angel of the Lord appeared in the road. Balaam still couldn't see him, but his donkey sure could. This time she had nowhere to turn, so she laid down in the middle of the road. Balaam was so angry that he struck his donkey again with his stick. So now we're going to read Numbers 22, verse 28, and we're going to find out what the Lord did next. So it says, Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? So what did God do for the donkey? He opened the donkey's mouth so that she could speak to Balaam. And what did she ask Balaam? What have I done to thee that you have struck me these 3 times? Can you imagine having a donkey speak to you? But guess what? Balaam answered his donkey. He told her that she was making a fool of him, and he wished that he had a sword to kill her. He must have been very angry with her. How many of you would have talked back to a donkey if it spoke to you in your language? Or would you be too surprised to say anything? I don't know what I would do. I think I would talk back to it, but it would be pretty weird, and I would be thinking that I was going crazy. So now we're going to read Numbers chapter 22, verses 31 through 33. Here's a little picture to go along with this as well, too. And so you can see that Balaam's about to hit his donkey, but there's the angel of the Lord there. So Numbers 22, verse 31 says, Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed down and fell on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to oppose you because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let her live. So God finally opened Balaam's eyes to where he could see, and what did he see? It was an angel of the Lord with a sword. What did Balaam do when he saw the angel? He bowed down and fell on his face. What did the angel tell Balaam he would have done if the donkey had not turned aside those 3 times? That he would have killed Balaam and let the donkey live. That's right. So the Lord was showing Balaam that he was against him. He knew what was in Balaam's heart. Balaam confessed his sin and offered to return home instead of going to King Balak. The angel of the Lord told Balaam to go, but he was only to speak what God told him to. Isn't that interesting how God used a donkey to spare Balaam to be obedient? But let's keep going to see if Balaam did obey. So when Balaam arrived, King Balak was really glad to see him. He wanted Balaam to curse the Israelites because he knew he couldn't defeat them in battle. King Balak took Balaam to a place where he could see some of the Israelite camps. They offered sacrifices to God and gave Balaam the words to say. And Balaam blessed the Israelites instead of cursing them. Do you think that this made King Balak happy? I wouldn't think so. So Numbers 23:11 through 12 says, "And Balak said to Balaam, 'What have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have done nothing but bless them.' And he answered the Lord and said, 'Must I not care to speak with what the Lord has put in my mouth?'" What did King Balak say after Balaam spoke? Was he happy about what happened? No. He was angry that Balaam blessed the Israelites instead of cursing them. And how did Balaam answer? He said, "Must I not take care to speak what the Lord puts in my mouth?" Well, King Balak wouldn't give up. He took Balaam to different places, hoping Balaam would curse the Israelites. But each time Balaam spoke, he gave blessings from God instead of curses. Balak was so angry that he refused to pay Balaam for coming. He even threatened to kill Balaam and told him to flee for his life. Balaam didn't get what he was hoping for, but God used Balaam to bless the Israelites. But it didn't end there. Before he returned home, Balaam did think of something evil and sneaky he could do to help defeat the Israelites. He told King Balak that even though God wouldn't allow him to curse the Israelites, Balak could still get them to disobey God so that they would have to be punished. King Balak liked this idea, so that his people, the Moabites, and their neighbors, the Midianites, came to the Israelites acting friendly. They invited them to sacrifice to their false god Baal. Then the Israelites went with their neighbors to their feast and bowed down to Baal. Soon the Israelites were getting married to Midianite women who led them to worship their false gods. This was Balaam's idea, and it worked. So we talked about the false god Baal here. So Baal is one of those little g gods that we've talked about, which isn't a real god. And so when you see that little g in the Bible, you know that is not a real God. When you see the big G, a capital G, we know that's when we're talking about our God, the only true God. He's the capital G God. So, what commandments did the Israelites disobey when they worshiped Baal? They broke the first and second commandments, which are to have no other gods before me and to have no graven images or idols. So, Balaam was right that God would punish the people for their sin. God sent a plague that killed 24,000 Israelites. The people had to learn not to follow these false gods and the people around them. They were to worship the only true God. God also punished the Moabites and the Midianites for tricking his people. He told Moses to attack them. In the end, the Israelites destroyed 5 kings of Midian He told Moses to attack them, and in the end, the Israelites destroyed 5 kings of Midian, and Balaam was also killed. So we're going to go ahead and answer a few more questions. So the king of Moab, who was afraid of the Israelites' name, was Balak. True. Bashan was the false prophet who was hired by the king of Moab to curse the Israelites. True or false? That one is false. Let me tell you, there's a lot of tricky B names in this story, but the false prophet's name was Balaam. And so a donkey saved Balaam from the angel of the Lord 3 times. True. All right. So God caused Balaam to say words of blessing to the Israelites instead of curses. True. The Israelites worshiped false gods with their neighbors. True or false? That one is true. So, Moses and the Israelites had to travel around the land of Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Then God gave them victory over two Amorite kings, Sihon and Og. The Israelites took over their lands. The king of Moab became afraid when he saw the Israelites' victories. He hired Balaam, a false prophet, to curse the Israelites for him. Why did God send the angel of the Lord to block Balaam's path? He knew that Balaam's heart was not obedient, and Balaam just wanted the honor and the money. Who saved Balaam from the angel of the Lord 3 times? It was his donkey. Balaam couldn't see the angel that was blocking his path, so he got mad every time this donkey tried to get off the road. Finally, his donkey laid down in the road, and God enabled her to speak to Balaam. Then God opened Balaam's eyes to see the angel. Balaam recognized his sin and said that he would speak only what God wanted him to. Some people don't believe that Balaam's donkey spoke, but we read it in the Bible, so we know that that is true. And why wouldn't people believe that for now, though? It's because animals don't talk to us today. Wouldn't it be so cool if they did, though, if your pets were able to talk to you and tell you what they're thinking about when they get so excited when you come through the door? So that would be amazing. But that's not something that we've ever seen. So some people doubt that it could have ever happened. However, we need to remember who God is and what he can do. God is the omnipotent creator. Do y'all remember what the word omnipotent means? Omnipotent means all powerful, and he can do whatever he wants. Don't you think that our all powerful God can make one of his creations like a donkey speak if he wanted to? Yes. God can do whatever he wants because he is sovereign and omnipotent. We should never doubt God's word just because we've never seen or heard an animal speak today. God did many amazing miracles to rescue the Israelites from Egypt and to bring them safely through the wilderness. Those were special signs he did back then. In the account of Balaam, God was faithful to keep his promise to bless the descendants of Abraham and protect him from those who wanted to curse them. God intervened by using a donkey to talk to get the attention of Balaam so that he could speak only what God wanted him to say. And that's what Balaam did. So that was our story for today. I hope y'all enjoyed it. We're going to keep going on to see all the different things that happened to the Israelites in the process of getting to the land of Canaan, or the promised land. And I just think it's weird just how many times these people have seen these miracles that the Lord has done for them, and yet each time they've just backed away from God and sinned, even though they were living out these miracles that he was doing, whether it was giving them food or making water out of a rock. Like, God has done amazing things in front of these people, and yet they still sin and they don't trust God to protect them like he says that he will. And so I think sometimes it can be even harder for us, not being in those times, and especially with everything that's going on right now in the world. But we have to just remember that God hasn't left us. He hasn't forgotten about us. He loves us. He's protecting us, and he knows exactly what's going on and has a plan for everything. Coronavirus coming did not surprise the Lord. Our schools being canceled or closed and doing stuff online didn't surprise him at all. God knew everything that was going to happen and planned it to happen. So that's just a little reminder of comfort for me and for everyone else, just to know that God is still in control through all of this and nothing is a surprise to him. So now I'm just going to close in prayer. So Father God, thank you so much for this day and for each of the kids and their parents that are listening right now, God. Just keep reminding us just about your perfect plan and all that's going on in the world. I just ask that you just continue to protect the people that are working and helping out the patients that are sick, God, and just be with all the people that are now starting back at work this week, and just continue to protect all of them and bless them and be with families that have lost loved ones, God. In your name I pray, amen. So y'all just continue to pray for people that you think of this week, anyone that might be sick or anyone that you know has lost people. People from our own church are having to go through all this, and it is really hard. So just remember all your friends and what they're going through right now, and just continue to pray for the world and that there will be a solution to this soon. All right, bye guys. I hope y'all have a great week.